She had always thought her mother-in-law was difficult, but nothing could have prepared her for this. A demand for a DNA test on her own son sent shockwaves through her life, exposing secrets she never imagined. What the results revealed would shatter assumptions, challenge loyalties, and force her to confront a truth she wasn't ready to face. Hello, my friends. I am Olivia, and this is Olivia's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I remember the day like it was etched into my skin, the sunlight streaming lazily through the kitchen window, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint scent of vanilla from the candles I always kept lit. I was folding my son Liam's little clothes, trying to catch up with the never-ending laundry, when my phone buzzed with a message from my mother-in-law, Helen. Just her name alone made my chest tighten. She had always been controlling, I suppose, the kind of woman who believed she knew everything about everyone. I had learned early in our marriage that peace meant nodding and smiling, keeping my opinions neatly tucked away. But this message was different. It was sharp, almost surgical in its wording. We need to discuss Liam's paternity. A DNA test would put my mind at ease. I stared at the screen, my hands freezing mid-fold. A DNA test? For my son? My heart thumped so violently I thought it might echo across the quiet apartment. Why now? Why after all these years? Questions collided in my head. Doubt, anger, fear. And then, beneath it all, a creeping, bitter sting of inadequacy. I had always worried I wasn't doing enough as a mother. Was this a reflection of that? David, my husband, was at work, oblivious to the storm that had just erupted in our kitchen. I wanted to call him immediately, but my thumb hovered over the screen, unsure whether to let him see my panic or shield him from Helen's venom. I felt a familiar weight settle over my chest, a mix of dread and shame I couldn't shake. For weeks, I had been trying to maintain normalcy for Liam, to let him feel the comfort of a home where his mother laughed too loudly and sometimes cried quietly, alone in the bathroom. But Helen's message cut through that fragile bubble of safety like a blade. Every memory of her sharp comments, her cold eyes at family gatherings, every whisper of doubt she had ever cast now surged back. I took a deep breath, trying to ground myself, the soft hum of the fridge filling the silence. I could almost hear Liam giggling from the living room, the sound a fragile tether to the world I wanted to protect. I knew Helen was capable of pushing boundaries, but this crossed a line I wasn't sure I could tolerate. I grabbed the envelope from the counter where Helen had left it during her last visit. Inside was a formal request, a sterile little piece of paper that threatened everything I held dear. My hands shook as I opened it, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. And then I saw it, the words I had been dreading, the exact moment my world tilted. She had scheduled the DNA test for next week. I froze. Liam's small hand slipped into mine, just as if he knew the storm was coming. And in that instant, I realized nothing would ever feel the same again. I spent the next few days in a haze, pacing the apartment while Liam played with his toys, the soft click of his blocks against the floor echoing like tiny warnings. Every time the doorbell rang, my stomach dropped. I knew it wasn't Helen coming over. She was busy orchestrating her next concerned intervention, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irreversibly in our lives. David tried to comfort me. He held my hand, pressed his forehead to mine, and whispered, "Olivia, we'll face this together." But even his warm reassurance couldn't quell the storm that had begun to brew inside me. I had always prided myself on being calm, rational, the kind of person who could handle life's surprises. Yet now, I felt small, trembling, trapped between protecting my son and standing up to a woman who had always seemed untouchable. Finally, the day arrived. The clinic smelled sterile and cold, the kind of place where laughter went to die. Liam clutched my hand as we walked down the hallway, his little footsteps echoing nervously. I forced a smile, hiding my own fear. It's just a test, I told myself. Nothing more than numbers and DNA strands, nothing to worry about. The nurse was kind, speaking softly to Liam, making him giggle and forget, for a moment, the tension that hung like a shadow over us. But I couldn't shake the weight of Helen's demand, the way she had insinuated doubt into every corner of our lives. I watched as Liam sat on the little chair, his legs swinging, and felt a sharp pang of anger and protectiveness. How dare she? How dare anyone make me question my love for this child? The countless sleepless nights, the whispered promises in the dark? The procedure was over in minutes, but the aftermath felt endless. I left the clinic clutching the sealed envelope with the results, my hands slick with sweat. Every instinct screamed to tear it open, to know immediately. Yet part of me wanted to wait, to delay the moment when reality might betray me. That night, I sat alone in the dim glow of the living room, Liam asleep in his crib, his soft breathing a fragile rhythm against the quiet. David had gone to soothe a neighbor's crisis, leaving me alone with my thoughts. My fingers trembled as they traced the edge of the envelope. I thought of Helen's sharp eyes, the way she had always seemed to measure me, to judge me. Finally, I opened it. My eyes scanned the page, and my breath caught. I reread the first line, then the second, trying to process what I was seeing. The test didn't just confirm what I already knew. It shattered the narrative Helen had built in her mind, and it turned everything I thought I knew about our family upside down. And then the final sentence hit me like a physical blow. I dropped the paper, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My heart raced as the room seemed to tilt around me. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, frozen by the truth staring back from that sterile piece of paper. Helen wasn't just wrong. She was hiding something. Something that explained everything. Something I had never imagined. Something that now demanded I see her not as an adversary, but as something else entirely. I couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in Liam's room seemed to whisper questions I didn't have the answers for. My mind raced over the DNA results again and again, trying to make sense of them. Helen's face flashed in front of me, so many years of tension, subtle insults, and judgments, and suddenly I realized that the woman I had viewed as an enemy was carrying a truth that no one had ever guessed. The next morning, I called her. My voice trembled as I forced the words out. "Helen, we need to talk." There was a pause on the other end, a silence that felt heavier than anything I had endured before. Then she spoke, softly, almost afraid. "Olivia, I suppose we do." I arrived at her house, my stomach a tight knot of fear and anticipation. The air felt thick, the early morning sunlight slicing through the blinds and casting long stripes across the floor. Helen sat at the dining table, hands folded, eyes unreadable. For a moment, I thought I might turn around and leave, but something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the need for answers, kept me rooted in place. We talked in quiet, halting sentences at first. Helen's voice, usually sharp and commanding, was softer now, vulnerable. The story began to unfold, like a fragile ribbon being untangled. She confessed things I had never suspected, secrets of her own past, sacrifices made in silence, choices that had shaped her life, and, indirectly, ours. And then came the part that made my breath catch. The DNA results hadn't revealed a mistake. They hadn't proven anything against Liam or me. What they revealed, in a way I never could have imagined, was that Helen herself had been living with a lie, a hidden truth that had influenced every judgment she ever passed. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke. I wanted to protect him, to protect all of you, and I didn't know how. I was afraid, Olivia, afraid that the truth would destroy everything. Her hands trembled, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the armor of control and criticism. She wasn't just a mother-in-law. She was a human being, flawed and scared, carrying a secret that had shaped her every move. My own anger softened, replaced by a strange mix of pity and understanding. I realized that the fight, the tension, the constant push and pull, it had all been rooted in fear and love, twisted together in ways I had never comprehended. For the first time in years, Helen reached out. Not just a handshake, not just a polite gesture, but an offering of trust. I'm sorry for doubting you, for making you feel unsafe in your own home. I was wrong. And then, just as I thought the conversation had reached its emotional apex, Helen hesitated, glanced at the envelope still clutched in my hand, and whispered something that made my heart stop. There's one more thing you need to know about Liam and about me. In that moment, everything I had thought I knew about our family, about loyalty, about love, teetered on the edge of revelation. My hands gripped the table so tightly it ached. I felt the weight of years, of assumptions, of unspoken truths pressing down. And I realized that the real secret, the one Helen had carried all these years, was about to change our lives forever. Helen's eyes met mine, glistening with a mix of fear and hope. She took a deep breath, as if summoning every ounce of courage she had been hiding for decades. Olivia, Liam isn't just my grandson. He's also my son. The words hung in the air, heavier than any accusation, more shocking than any fight we had ever had. My mind raced, trying to process the impossible. What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Helen's hands shook as she reached for mine. Years ago, before I met David's father, I made a choice I thought I could bury. Liam's father, he never knew. I gave him up to protect him, to protect me. And somehow, life brought you, Olivia, into his life. And now, he is both my grandson and my son, my blood, and yet our family's love has made him yours too. Time seemed to freeze. Liam's small footsteps echoed behind me as he wandered in, oblivious to the revelation that had just upended the very foundation of our lives. I looked at him, and in his innocent eyes, I saw the embodiment of love untainted by secrets. All the fear, the anger, the resentment, none of it mattered in comparison to the truth that now connected all of us in ways I couldn't have imagined. I sank into the chair, my chest heaving, tears spilling freely. The anger that had once consumed me toward Helen dissolved, replaced by a deep, aching empathy. I realized she hadn't been an enemy. She had been a woman trying to navigate the impossible, trapped by her own choices and haunted by the weight of secrets she could never voice. Helen knelt beside me, her voice soft and trembling. I've carried this alone for too long. I see now that love isn't about control or judgment. It's about trust and letting those you care for know the truth. In that moment, something shifted. The years of tension, of quiet battles, and unspoken resentments seemed to lift. I reached out and hugged her, a gesture that spoke louder than any words ever could. We cried together, a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law bound by truth, by blood, and by the unexpected twists of life that had brought us here. Liam toddled into our embrace, sensing the emotional tide around him. I held him close, feeling the warmth of family in a way I never had before. Despite the tangled secrets, despite the shocking revelations, love had found a way to prevail. Helen whispered one last thing, her voice breaking with relief. "He will always be loved, Olivia, by both of us, and that's all that matters." And in that quiet living room, sunlight spilling across the floor, I finally understood. Family wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about judgment or control. It was about connection, forgiveness, and the courage to face the truth, no matter how impossible it seemed. From that day forward, our home felt lighter, warmer, filled with laughter, understanding, and the knowledge that even the deepest secrets could be met with love. Liam was our miracle, our bond, our reminder that family isn't just defined by blood, it's defined by the love we choose to share.